Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture. I want to start maybe a new series today that I'm thinking I'm going to call Killer Serials, uh, where I'm going to talk about some of the old movie serials from the 1930s and 40s, give them a review, maybe point people towards some genuinely fun films that they might have missed out on. And for the inaugural Killer Serials, I want to talk about Captain Marvel. No, not her, or him, or whoa, or him. But I'm talking about the original Captain Marvel. No, his name's not Shazam. Captain Marvel, created in 1939 by C.C. Beck and Bill Parker, who first appeared in Whiz Comics, number 2, in February 1949. And less than a year later, he was on the big screen. In fact, he was the first superhero to ever make it to the big screen in live action. Max Fleischer's Superman cartoons beat him there, but Superman himself wouldn't make it into the, live action movies for quite a few years to come. And apparently there were a lot of wranglings between the studios and national publications. But Fawcett was happy to get Captain Marvel out there. And so, there he was. 12 chapters, Republic Pictures, with a pretty decent budget. And there we see what he looked like actually on the big screen. Pretty comic accurate when you get right down to it, especially when you consider the costume there is based upon his earliest costume in the comics, not the redesign that came a little bit later. That was a little simpler, a little less formal superhero attire. So the Adventures of Captain Marvel premieres in 1941, produced by Hiram S. Brown Jr. It was directed by John English and William Whitney. Now, English was, in fact, English. He worked 17 times with William Whitney, so they were kind of a partnership. He also directed Captain America, which was Republic's last superhero serial, and probably the next one I'm going to cover. Did a lot of B pictures, westerns, especially Gene Autry, and a lot of TV westerns. William Whitney, born in Oklahoma, he worked until 1982, did serials, did westerns, was later a staff director on Wild Wild West. How cool is that? Screenplay was by Ronald Davidson, Norman S. Hall, Arch B. Heath, Joseph Poland, and Saul Short. Now, the film starred Tom Tyler as Captain Marvel. Tyler is also born in Oklahoma, mostly did westerns. He is maybe best known for playing Karis, the mummy, in the Universal Pictures after Boris Karloff left that role. Of course, Karloff didn't play Karis. He played a different mummy, but, mummies are mummies. Sadly, his career was cut short by rheumatoid arthritis, and he passed away in 1954, which actually there's a weird legacy of actors back in the day playing these superheroes and not living to a ripe old age. Of course, the alter ego of Captain Marvel, Billy Batson, played by Frank Coughlin Jr. He was, you look at him on screen and he seems kind of like a little bit like a wimpy, nerdy guy. Had kind of a high voice, but he had a career that spanned about 129 films, and he did a 23-year stint in the U.S. Navy as an aviator, in which he rose to the rank of lieutenant commander. So, kind of an awesome guy. He started out in Our Gang comedies. Actually had a bit part in Gone with the Wind, as a Confederate soldier, wounded soldier being carried off the field, and in which he actually uses the word damn before Clark Gable does in that movie. So, Frank Coughlin Jr., man, he's kind of a badass. His pal is Whitey. Make of that what you will. Played by William Benedict. He's best known for Bowery Boy comedies, in which he also played a role of Whitey. Maybe it's the same Whitey, maybe not. Also an Oklahoman. That's our third. And we have the bad guy of the picture, the Scorpion. Who plays the Scorpion? We don't know. Louise Curry, though, plays Betty Wallace, who is not the love interest, but she's associated with the guys who are being preyed upon by the Scorpion. Maybe refer to her as a Gal Friday. She's pretty cool, actually, in the movie. Robert Strange plays John Malcolm. John Malcolm is the leader of an expedition that uncovers something that gets the attention of the evil Scorpion. Harry J. Worth playing Professor Bentley. We have Bryant Washburn as Harry Carlisle. John Davison as Tal Chotali. George Pembroke as Dr. Lang. Oh, I guess I ran out of pictures. All right, so let's get into this. So we're talking about a serial. Serials were made for young audiences. Serials did not generally have complex, meaningful plots. They generally did not have complex, dramatic roles for actors. The serials were all about action. And I think you really need to judge them on their action, the stunts, the special effects, the fight scenes. The plot needs to hold together. The characters need to be engaging, especially the hero and the villain. But, we're not going to judge these things the way we would be judging, for example, Citizen Kane. Although some people regard Captain Marvel as the Citizen Kane of serials. So our story begins in a remote section of Siam, which is now generally called Thailand, near the Burmese border, Burma, generally now called Myanmar, in a desolate volcanic land which has for centuries been taboo to white men, the Valley of the Tombs. So this is especially bad news for Whitey, because, there's no way they're not going to target him. So we have a setting in Southeast Asia with the Malcolm Archaeological Expedition. They have gone into the Valley of Tombs to find what stuff they can dig up. And these are the guys that oppose them. These are the Southeast Asians who oppose them. These guys are not from Southeast Asia. And in fact, they look the way they look because they were reusing scenes from a Republic film from 1938 called Storm over Bengal. And they don't even look that necessarily legit for Bengal. What they really do look like are somewhat like maybe Afghanis, but maybe from India or Pakistan, which they could have just set the thing there. It really didn't need to be in Southeast Asia, but they did. And again, it doesn't really matter that much in terms of the plot. So the expedition enters this tomb in search of relics. Very Indiana Jones. In fact, Whitey at one point has a costume on that actually looks a lot like Indiana Jones. And so while they're in there, they discover this golden scorpion figurine about yay big. Claws, a tail, and lenses. And they discover some handy instructions for it. And it's really this impressive object that when the lenses are properly aligned, this thing can do all sorts of cool stuff. It's actually a pretty cool idea. But in the process of them looking for this thing, there's a cave-in. The volcano god that rules over the valley is angry. There's a cave-in. People are trapped. And Billy Batson runs into Leon Redbone. No, he does not run into Leon Redbone. He runs into the wizard Shazam. So here we're not quite doing what we had in the comic books, where Shazam is encountered in a subway, or a caverns connected to a subway. Here he's in Southeast Asia, and he reveals to Billy Batson that he is going to give him the power to become Captain Marvel, the protector of this Scorpion. And he's going to have the wisdom of Solomon and the strength of Hercules, stamina of Atlas, power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, the speed of Mercury. Greek gods in Southeast Asia. And again, if you put this in the Afghanistan, Pakistan area, that almost actually makes sense. Alexander the Great got that far and did leave Greeks in the area as, I guess you could call them, colonists. And they did have an impact on Buddhism as it traveled, north from India and then into that area and then along the Silk Road to China, Japan. It's kind of interesting, the two different major forms of Buddhism, the differences, and some of those differences tie back to the presence of the Greeks in that area. So that would have actually been kind of cool and made sense, but we're talking about a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds watching the show, so it doesn't really matter. So Billy Batson, he's got the power word Shazam, and he gives it a shot, and he explodes. And everybody dies. No. He becomes Captain Marvel, and of course Captain Marvel manages to rescue the party and get them outside and turn back into Billy Batson before anybody really knows what has happened. So they're not aware yet of his secret. But the volcano's aware, and the volcano is angry. And so the tribesmen who live in this area say, we have to get these interlopers out of our valley. And this is where we get the big battle scene, like I said, that came from an earlier film. And it's pretty well staged in that earlier film. Pretty cool. Lots of guns going off. There's a great scene where some of the tribesmen, the warriors, are being catapulted into this little fort that the expedition is using, which are very clearly dummies on trees, and but we're supposed to believe they're tucking and rolling and getting in there. But they do infiltrate. They kill a member of the expedition. The expedition gets in their cars, gets their stuff together, and decides to, beat a hasty retreat. And they're being followed by the warriors, and Billy Batson becomes Captain Marvel again, flying to the rescue. The warriors have set explosives on this bridge, and this is going to kill Betty and Whitey, and the car seemingly plunges them to their deaths. But it turns out it lands. I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna ruin the first big surprise. But again, come on. They survive the cliffhangers. Car plunges into a river. Captain Marvel lands and gets them out. Okay. This is one of the first times that we get to see the flying effect from the serial. Now, the serial cost, in today's dollars, about $3.1 million to make, and it went over budget, but it has really good special effects for the time. The flying effects were done by Howard and Theodore Lydecker. The way they did it was with a 7-foot tall dummy made of paper mache, weighed only about 15 pounds. They would pull it along a wire, and it really does look pretty good in most of these effects. They would have him flying up on a building. They would have him flying. One time he's flying along this road to intercept a van. Pretty good stuff. It was originally intended for a Superman serial. A Superman serial was in the works. It was being negotiated, and it ended up not happening, and ended up getting turned into a different serial without Superman and without, in fact, a superhero at all. When they would do a landing, David Sharp was their stuntman, and they would have him sort of obviously jump off of some platform, down to the ground, but they would do it in just a little bit of a slow motion. So you got the impression of him not like falling to the ground, but of landing, like he was flying and now he's landed, very kind of, sort of gently. It was really a great effect. The Lydecker brothers did effects for a lot of Republic serials, and they were really known for their miniature effects. And they won an Academy Award in 1941 for Women in War. Later worked on Lost in Space and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, which were, odd little TV shows, but God bless them. So there's the bridge being blown up. I'm doing great with these. So once they've escaped from Southeast Asia, they go back to America, to a big city. I don't think they ever make it clear where the city is. It doesn't matter. They decide they're going to divide the lenses up among the different members of this of the expedition. And unbeknownst to them, one member of the expedition is the Scorpion. The Scorpion is our big bad guy. He wants to assemble all the lenses so he can use the Scorpion, which, when properly assembled, will act as an atom smasher, they say. The first time we see it work, they actually turn normal stones into gold. We'll see it do some other incredible things as it goes on. So the Scorpion, whoever he is, has the Scorpion statuette. He needs the lenses. And that's going to be your basic plot for the rest of the show. The bad guys, his primary henchman, is going to go out, try to kidnap one of the members of the expedition, try to get a hold of his lens. There's spills and thrills and, deadly traps and the whole 9 yards. And then into this will come Captain Marvel, who will try to save everybody. And it works. It's a simple plot, and you see it in a lot of serials where they have the mystery villain. Who's the actual bad guy? So here are your potential suspects, and when they'll show them, they'll all look a little bit guilty, maybe. They do a nice job stringing you along. Of course, as it folds, certain people are sort of eliminated, as the potential Scorpion. Great stunts in the picture. This is right after they have Captain Marvel soar in to land on this truck to save, I believe Betty was in the back of it in her car, and they were trying to gas her. There's another interesting sequence relatively early on where they had Betty in this parking garage in her car. She was unconscious. They set the car to going down this spiral ramp so that when it gets to the bottom, it'll crash and she'll be killed. Captain Marvel arrives just in time, stops the car, sees the bad guys up on top of this building. And so he flies up to the roof of this building, jumps over this car. It's a really great effect. He leaps over this thing, tackles these guys. This is after they tried to drop a engine block on her or something, which he literally takes the engine block and chucks it at one of these dudes, and probably kills him. And you think, well, this guy doesn't kill. He's Captain Marvel. Well, I got news for you. He grabs one of those guys, lifts him over his head, walks to the edge of the roof, doesn't question him. He's not doing the sort of bad cop thing. He hurls this guy off the friggin' roof, probably to his death. There's a great scream as he goes over. So again, there's some comic accurate stuff in this, and maybe some stuff that's not quite as accurate. I mean, honestly, I've never really gotten to read the old Captain Marvels, although I did just buy one of those DC giant comic books, so I'm going to get to soon. So I don't know, maybe Captain Marvel did a lot more killing than I assume he did, but this Captain Marvel, watch out. And there's the reaction of the other guy. It's understandably a little freaked out. Of course, he was just trying to murder someone himself, so hey, Tough cheese, buddy. Um, another segment, they have the Scorpion with, like, I think maybe one or two lenses. They've lured Billy Batson into this mine, this abandoned mine, which I'll bet has probably been in about 400 movies back in the day. At least the tunnel, the cave that he walks into. And so he goes in and almost falls into a pit. And comes Captain Marvel and confronts the Scorpion who's in there, but the Scorpion's not really in there. He's outside with his men, and they focus this beam from the Scorpion on the cave, and it starts melting. It's a really cool effect. It's essentially like they're smearing or melting the film almost. But this creates this molten lava that runs into the place, and oh, it's certain death for Captain Marvel. You know, this is the first movie, live action movie with a superhero. So these guys had to pretty much invent the special effects that a lot of us now take for granted with superheroes. The flying scenes, for example. But also, how do you deal with a character who is so much stronger than the bad guys? I mean, your typical serial, at least once or twice every episode, you have a giant fist fight between the good guys and bad guys. How do you do that with Captain Marvel? You know, he can literally just pick people up and throw them off of roofs or do whatever he wants to do. And they really did a good job of making that work. Yeah, he can whoop people, but they find things that can challenge him. One segment has him coming in through this window, pulling these bars apart. Pretty convincing, you know, not bad. And he's approaching these guys, and you can see they're shooting at him, and the bullets are bouncing off of him. But he ends up, knocking the guys around, and there's a safe on the wall with a lens in it that he doesn't know is electrified. And so when he steps over and tries to get into it, he's electrified, and it knocks him out for a minute, which is reasonable. So, you know, for what it was, the writing was really pretty darn good in finding ways to challenge the superhero, and keep it relatively, grounded. And, you have the mystery segment with him trying to figure out who is the Scorpion, which obviously they find out in the 12th chapter. The acting is pretty good throughout. Again, we're not talking about Citizen Kane, but everybody does a pretty good job in it. Tyler as Captain Marvel, I don't know if he's exactly what I would have pictured in the role. They really use Captain Marvel as just a temporary, super-powered alter ego for Billy Batson. And not as so much of a character in his own right. But listen, for the first superhero, whoever makes it onto film in live action, The Adventures of Captain Marvel, 1941, Republic Pictures, is really good. And I know it's highly considered by many critics of serials of that period. It's generally regarded as one of the better ones done. Excellent special effects, smart choreography for the fights, and it's a lot of fun. And of course, hey, that's the main thing with these stunts, right? Fun is what we're there for. Highly suggest you go seek it out if you've never watched it. It's very engaging. Each chapter, I think, is about 20 minutes long. You could binge them. You could watch them, one a day. You could watch them one a week, like they would have back in the old days. But I highly suggest you go seek out The Adventures of Captain Marvel, the first superhero serial, maybe the best superhero serial as well. I thank you if you've watched this far into the video. If you enjoyed it, please hit like, please subscribe, please share it with your friends. If you didn't like it, I don't know, share it with your enemies. That's going to be it for today. Hope you'll join me again in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. God bless you. Be kind to one another, and have some fun out there.